Hi, I'm Diane Lucas, and welcome to Book 101 Review. Book 101 is all about the books that I read for the last 40 years. And today I have my special guest. He's executive pastor of campus development and expansion, no other than Mr. Ken Hester.
Hey, Daniel, how are you? Thanks for having me on.
I'm fabulous, Mr. Ken, and thank you so much for being part on Book 101 Review. And can you please introduce more about yourself?
Yeah, I live in Austin, Texas. I've got two amazing kids, a 7-year-old. He'll be 8 in just a couple of weeks. His name is Isaac. We got a 5-year-old Madelyn, and my wife and I will be celebrating 18 years of marriage here in June. I've been part of leadership and development for over 20 years, both in business as well as coaching, and of course in the nonprofit and church world as well. So love talking about leadership, talking about just how to make teams better. And I love being on podcasts like this with yourself, talking about also books and things that have influenced my leadership along the way. I think the collaboration and connection that we have makes us better leaders together. So thanks for having me on.
Indeed, Mr. Ken Hester, thank you so much for sharing your knowledge to the world. So let's talk about navigating leadership charts, compass, and courage for tomorrow. Can you tell us about this?
Yeah, I mean, leadership, as you're looking at org charts, as you're looking at one-on-ones, as you're looking at different ways for you to really define and understand your team better, there's a bunch of assessments out there. One of the assessments that I work with that I love is Working Genius. And it really tells you how you work. A lot of assessments out there speak more about your personality, right? Your personality traits, the different levels of who you are, which is great. You definitely need to understand better who you are. But within a working organization, you also need to know how you work together with someone else, or what their strengths are and what your strengths are. The Working Genius gives you that framework. And it's one of the tools that I've used that has really been helpful. It kind of gives you that understanding of, hey, if I think and ask a bunch of questions, we call that wonder. And I'm wondering, I'm trying to think through kind of pie in the sky. Why do we do that? How do we do that? How can we do that better? And then there's invention, which is I have a new idea. I have a new way of thinking. I want to whiteboard some things. I want to make sure that works well, or I think that can work well. And then there's the discernment aspect of it, where it's working inside of you and you're not quite sure. You don't have data necessarily to support it, but you feel like, man, this is going to work or it's not going to work. And so you can't quite articulate that, but more times than not, you're right because of that discerning gene within you. And then, of course, there's galvanizing. You get people excited about your project. Usually that is a mid-level manager, right? That's somebody that says, hey, somebody else has told me what to do, but I'm going to get everybody else excited about where we're going. And then there's an enablement factor as well that says, hey, I'm going to help support a lot of project managers fall into this role where I'm going to support what else is happening on the top end. I'm not necessarily the decision maker. I'm not the one that's going to come up with the idea, but I will support that 100%. And then finally, there's tenacity, which kind of is in the details. Like, what are the standard operating procedures for that? What is the data that supports the decision? Where do we get into the kind of the deep nitty gritty of it? So when I see teams be effective, it's knowing which team member fits into those categories, which one drives them the most. And through that drive and through that understanding, then they're able to work more in collaboration together.
Beautifully articulated, Mr. Ken. Very well said. How do you define leadership in today's fast-changing world?
Yeah, I mean, leadership For so long, I don't think it's anything. I don't think it's a new concept, but it's one that needs to be reminded, and we need to revisit on a regular basis. Leadership is really continuing to learn and continuing to trust. So if I'm learning, and that's why I love your podcast, right? Like what books, what podcasts, what information is out there that can help to hone my skills and sharpen me, make me a better leader. That's part one. Then part two is trusting the people around you. If I have to hold on to everything and I don't trust and I don't give away some of those decision-making rights, then ultimately I become the lid for our organization. But if I say, I'm going to raise this person up, I'm going to train them, I'm going to develop them, I'm going to create them to be a leader. Now I become a leader of leaders rather than a manager of doers. So I would really encourage leaders out there to evaluate themselves. How are they leading? How are they learning? And how are they trusting?
Indeed, Mr. Ken. And what do the charge, compass, and courage represent in your leadership model?
Yeah, courage is one of those hard to define traits, right? So courage is definitely one of those things that it makes you take risks, and some people are really great risk takers. Other people are more calculated. And what I would say is I would merge those together, and I would take calculated risks. So as I mentioned in Working Genius, I go, okay, great. I'm an invention person. I like new ideas. I like to put whiteboard thoughts out there. There's no bad idea. It's just haven't been implemented yet. And when we're thinking through those ideas, I really need somebody on the team that's going to say, hey, what's the data to support that? What is the procedure that we need to have? What are the deliverables? What are the goals attached to that? When do you want that to be done? So if I know that is a weakness of mine, or that's not a strength, I need to have somebody else in the room, which for me takes some courage. It takes some risk. It takes some vulnerability to say, I'm going to step out of my comfort zone and I'm going to invite someone else in, because now I'm not the expert. And I think a lot of leaders feel the weight of being the expert. A lot of leaders feel like if I'm not the expert, if everybody's looking to me to give the answers, and if there's vulnerability in there, then they are not seen as the leader. What I've learned over now a couple of decades of leadership is vulnerability allows people to then feel like you are a true, authentic leader. And people are looking more and more for that authenticity in leadership than they are in a micromanager or they are in a tyrant of sorts. I think that shift has changed from, the 50s, 60s, even some of the 70s and 80s of like, hey, just do what I say and get it done. Now it feels like we're in more of a collaborative, more of an authentic, genuine, like I want my leader to know me and I want to know my leader. And if they don't struggle with anything, then it feels like I also can't struggle with anything. So I think that openness, that courage that allows you to share will then translate into courage for your team to also be able to share what their weaknesses are. And then you become better as an organization.
Genuine leadership indeed. What does it mean use your inner compass in leadership decisions?
Yeah, for me, being a pastor and in church world, regardless of what faith you may have, regardless of what religion you follow, there should be some kind of inner compass for you. There's a difference between right and wrong. There's a difference between an integrity level that you have of decision making. And so when I use my inner compass, I ask myself usually a couple of questions. Not only could I do this, but should I do this? Right? I think there's a lot of things that we can do as leaders and as individuals. The world is your oyster, but we shouldn't do all of the things that are available to us. Right? So just because I can eat for 2 hours doesn't mean that I should. So there's a lot
True.
of things I could do, but I shouldn't. And I think as leaders, we have to be able to use that moral compass, use that inner compass, that guiding stone. Whatever it is for you, it could be something different. For me, it is my faith. For me, it is a relationship with Jesus Christ. And I say, all right, how does this match up with, for me, biblical scripture? How does this match up with my core values, who I feel like I am as an individual? And when I'm making decisions based on my values and based on what I want to see, not only within my own life, but within the organization, that helps us move forward. So that inner compass, as you define it as a leader, will help you make decisions, not just based on feeling, but based on values and based on direction.
What are the biggest leadership challenges you see emerging today and tomorrow, Mr. Ken?
Yeah, I think that because there is a lack of vulnerability, leaders that should be in leadership roles will shy away from that leadership opportunity because they think they have to be perfect, or they think they have to have it all together, or they think they have to have all the answers. So it becomes ethereal, or it becomes unattainable because, now I'm intimidated, or now I have anxiety around the pressure that it means to be a leader. So I think as leaders, again, our current leaders, we're seeing more and more leaders that are retiring. We see our less and less leaders that are stepping up into being leaders of other leaders, or leaders of organizations. Not that it's a bad thing, but we have a lot of entrepreneurs. There's a term out there now that are solopreneurs. They're just doing things for themselves. And there's a lid to that. There's a limit to that. And we don't become better as a society. We don't become better as countries. We don't become better as the world total if we're not collaborating and connecting and making decisions together. I am a much better decision maker when I have multiple people speaking and giving me frame of reference. If I do it within a vacuum, if I do it within a bubble, then I'm not thinking through all the scenarios that could come about. So I think a big thing that we're facing right now is a lack of leadership because we don't. A lot of people are just intimidated by that leadership title.
Indeed, very well said, Mr. Ken. Very well said. What are some practical ways leaders can stay grounded in their values?
Yeah, one of the things that I do is I just have my values like in front of me all the time. you know, so
Yes.
I've got them printed out. They're right next to my calendar. I look at them on a regular basis, and I ask myself the question: am I making decisions based on these values? Obviously, one of my values is faith. Another value is generosity. Another value is health. Another value is family. Right. So I say, am I making this decision best based on what's best for my family, what's best for my faith, what's best for being generous in the finances that I've been given and that I can steward myself. So I'm looking at those values on a regular basis. I would say if you're trying to discover what your values are, there's many ways that you could do it. You can chat GPT it or whatever. Is like, help me discover my values. But ultimately, it's not just discovering them. It's making decisions based on them. And so you're saying no to things based on values, but you're also saying yes to things based on values.
Can you share a personal story when you had to rely on your compass and courage to lead effectively?
Yeah, there are several times in leadership. It's almost weekly where you've got to ask yourself a deep question. How am I defined by this decision? How will people see me in this decision? Will I will this match with my values? And so when I think about just even being a dad, my kids watch me, and they mimic what I do. So one of the values we have is based on faith and based on us, walking that faith out. And so my son asked me the other day, he's like, Dad, why can't we do this? Why can't we go there? Why can't we? And I said, hey, well, that's just not what we do. That's not what Hesters do. And he's like, but my friends do it. And I said, yeah, well, your friends want to do things based on how their parents lead them. We're going to do things on how I lead you. And it started to like click in his brain for him, where he's like, oh, okay. So some people do some things because that it's their values, but we do things because these are our values. So I was telling him, health is one of ours. So he asked me the other day, why do you work out every day? I said, because health is a value for me. Then he asked me the other day why we couldn't go eat at a fast food restaurant. And I said, well, because they don't really have healthy food. We're going to go eat over here instead. Oh, okay. So it's starting to click in his brain that we're now making decisions based off of values. And so that's pretty cool to see in my kids. And I would say that's probably the best representation of it as well.
Mr. Ken, what advice would you give new or emerging leaders trying to find their direction?
Yeah, those new leaders, find a mentor, find somebody in your life, find a coach that is going to help you understand. They've been a little bit farther along in their journey than you have. I think, again, leaders, we feel like we have to have all the answers, but when we seek out leadership development, when we seek out mentorship, usually mentors don't just kind of tap you on the shoulder. Yeah, you need to be proactive in reaching out to people and to say, hey, can we grab coffee? Can we? And I wouldn't necessarily ask them to be your mentor. That can be intimidating sometimes.
Yes.
It would be like in your brain, they're your mentor, and you're just asking in-depth questions that will help you derive leadership principles from those conversations, and do it over coffee, do it over lunch, whatever it is. And they don't have to know that they're mentoring you. Sometimes people are more than willing to do that, but I think it starts with a relationship. And if leaders can, again, continue to learn from other leaders, there's been leadership for thousands of years. How can I tap into some of that and gain that knowledge base on and let it apply to my leadership?
Mr. Ken, as executive pastor, what will be your short-term and long-term goals?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's pretty easy. How do we reach more people with the gospel for us? So how do we make an impact in the community? I think that means a couple of different things. It means partnering with people in the community. So if we're going to partner with people, we're going to partner with organizations, we're partner with food shelters, we're partnering with elementary and middle school mentoring opportunities, leadership development, helping clothe the homeless, helping provide food and shelter for the homeless. If we're doing the things that really are kind of messy and a lot of people don't want to do, or don't see the benefit of it, that's where the church and my role feels fulfilling. It feels like I'm moving things forward. And it doesn't have to be hundreds of thousands of people. It really just starts with one life at a time. And if I could change one person's life and I change their trajectory, not only do I change their life, I change their family's trajectory. I change their generational trajectory. And that could impact hundreds or thousands over the years. But it doesn't feel significant or overly significant in the moment. But it's like a compounding effect. If I help one person and you help one person and somebody else helps one person, and then they have a family of 3 or 4 or 5, we're actually helping dozens and then hundreds of people just because we each decided that we would help one.
Good luck to your goals, Mr. Ken, and thank you so much for your advice as well. And how can leaders build a team that shares the same compass and vision?
Yeah, I think this is something I've had kind of connect back to values again. It I would say enough people, they don't determine their own value system. They really just attach to an organization's value system. So if the values or mission statement or whatever it is of Nike or Google or whoever, Tesla, you're like, oh, I want to be a part of that organization because this is what they value and this is what they do. That's fine. But if it doesn't completely connect to your value system, there's going to be a point in time where it doesn't match. And then you're going to move on to another organization. So if you could say, hey, we've got 5 values and an organization has 5 values. If 3 or 4 of those values match, then you're probably going to be in that organization for a long period of time. But if only one of those values match, you're probably not going to be there very long. You'll be excited about the new job opportunity. You're going to be excited about the new place to work or new place to live. But that's going to wear off in time. So I would say determine your own set of personal values and then match those values as best you can with the organization that you want to be a part of.
Indeed, Mr. Ken, beautifully articulated. Very well said. Before we wrap up our discussion for today, I'm inviting you to please do listen to my other podcast, people, because my abstract poetry is already in 5th season, abstract poetry in 2nd season, and of course my book 101 review in its 5th season as well, comedy 101 in 2nd season, and food 101 in its 5th season too, geography 101 and love letters are in 3rd season, and my baby podcast, mental health 101, and movie 101 review and music 101 in each 4th season. So please do listen to them wherever you listen your podcast. So Mr. Ken, if there's one piece of advice leaders should carry in tomorrow, what would it be?
Stay humble. As a leader, your humility will get you farther than your knowledge. And if you are humble with your team, if you're humble with yourself, then you will continue to be a learner, and you will continue to be a developer, and you will continue to lead others. So humility is probably the most underrated trait of the greatest leaders.
Mr. Ken Hester, thank you so much for sharing your empowering knowledge to the world. Recommended book regarding our topic.
Yeah, I mean, when I look back on the books that have inspired me or challenged me or just helped develop process in my leadership, I think of a couple of guys. It's Chip and Dan Heath. They both have written some books together. They're brothers. They give incredible insight on leadership, on communication, on development. And then Dan specifically wrote a book called Upstream. I have it here. It's Upstream by Dan Heath. And the premise of the book is how do you fix things proactively before they happen? And he gives his illustration. It's a story, probably an old story that's been used many times before. But imagine that you and I are walking down the riverbed, and we're just walking down the side of the river, and we're on a trail, and we see a child that's caught up in the downstream. Well, we jump in and we save that child. As soon as we get back to the shoreline, we see another child that is caught up in the river. We jump back in, we save that child. Then a third child, I go to jump back in the river and you start walking up the trail. And I'm yelling to you, what are you doing? Daniel, what are you doing? Where are you going? We got to save this kid. And you say, I'm going to go beat up the person that is throwing kids in the river. Right?
Right.
So the premise of the book is don't just fix the problem that is downstream, but go and fix the actual problem that is the source, that is at the root of it. And so Dan does a phenomenal job of using many different examples around the globe of organizations, of countries, of individuals that have changed their mindset in just trying to fix the downstream problem and really being proactive in the upstream. So I think every leader should read Upstream, and I think that will change and challenge their mindset.
Again, Mr. Ken, thank you so much for your recommendation. And hoping one day you will write a book like this and come back to my Book 101 review and let's talk about it. So
I'd love to write a book like that for sure. So when I do, I'll call you.
That'd be awesome. So can you please invite our listeners to support your advocacy?
Yeah, again, I would say for any of you that are listening, become better leaders. And there's nothing that I would do or I would say for myself. But if you listen to this podcast and you say, I'm going to become a better leader for this, I'm going to come up with a plan for it, I'm going to invest in myself. If you invest in yourself, then that will always bring return.
Yes, people, let's support Mr. Ken Hester, because if you support him, more and more and more empowering coaching to come. So, Mr. Ken, thank you so much for your time.
Thanks again.
More to come, people. See you soon.